Disappointingly, I'm also losing some of our new young 20-year-old males in particular to Catholicism. I really need upskilling to the cutting edge of this conversation and not the decade behind which I feel I am.
A lot of Catholics have this idea that Protestants just don't understand Catholicism.
The good news is that help is available. I think that book is probably the most helpful book written this century for Protestants seeking to understand Roman Catholicism.
Hello and welcome to Certainty for Eternity, the podcast.
Where we make sense of Catholicism and Christianity. Well, Rayne, another session.
Another one, we're back again.
Comes around so quickly. Last session was wonderful with Lauren, wasn't it? And thinking through Catholic culture and how we can kind of connect with that and understand that better. I really enjoyed that.
I've been thinking about that conversation heaps over the last week, and I can't wait to see what everyone thinks about it and what questions come out of it. And I just want to remind you guys as well, before we get started in today's, please like this video, subscribe, and follow along on Instagram and Facebook, because it's the best way to know when things are coming, what's happening, and just to support our show and our ministry.
Yeah. Well, today, Rayne, we're going to be offering some help to Christians that are wanting help in understanding Roman Catholicism, talking with their Catholic friends about Jesus in the way of different resources that are able to help people share the gospel with Catholics. So things like Bible studies, help Protestants to understand Roman Catholicism more deeply, and also train others that are interested in understanding Roman Catholicism better. There's lots of help available, and it's a really good opportunity to talk about that today.
I'm really excited. I think that for me, doing this podcast with Mark has been a huge resource in and of itself, but he's directed me towards things that he has some of these behind him, but towards resources that have been really helpful for me in trying to expand my grasp of Catholicism and evangelism and all of these things that kind of sit behind both worldviews. And so I'm really excited to get to share all that with you guys today too.
It's one of the great things about Christianity, isn't it? It's a team sport and we help each other. So we hope that some of these resources that we talk about today will be really helpful for you and the Catholic friends that you have. I wanted to start with an email that I got yesterday. We've planned this podcast for months, but yesterday I received an email from a friend that I'd like to share with you. It might make a few Catholics listening to our podcast a little bit happy, and a few of the Protestants listening to our podcast a little bit sad. I know that it affected you when you read this email yesterday, Rayne, but let me read it. I'm now the church leader of St. X's, which has a history of Anglo-Catholicism in our main services, which are still in a high church style, which I found to be a great vehicle to reach more people. Isn't that fantastic? In particular, I'm getting heaps of young 20-year-olds coming through our church, coming to us for the traditional worship style of St. X's. Some have come from Catholic and Orthodox backgrounds looking for something more biblical. But many come investigating Jesus from more low church backgrounds and are swayed by, and some even gravitate to, go further towards Catholicism. Disappointingly, I'm also losing some of our new young 20-year-old males in particular to Catholicism. And we need to review our discipleship and communication plans to hit the nail on the head faster and more effectively. I would love help in this space, and perhaps you could even speak to our team to help resource us in this space better. I get the feeling I have blind spots in my communication, and I'm out of date with the online Catholics who seem to be vigorously persuading people to the Church Fathers as the basis of doctrine rather than Scripture, and also away from grace, that is, in the Protestant sense. I feel there's consistency in the argumentation, but I also feel like I'm talking slightly past the key sticking points at times. because of the space we occupy and the quality of conversations I have around this space, I really need upskilling to the cutting edge of this conversation and not the decade behind, which I feel I am. There you go. Came through yesterday morning. A friend not far from where I live sent me that email. It's kind of why we do what we do, isn't it, Rayne?
It is 100% why we do what we do. And I think there's a lot in there to unpack.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that help is available, and we're not the only ones that are doing this. There's people around the world, Protestants around the world, that are providing great resources to help Protestants understand Roman Catholicism and have great chats with them about Jesus. And I know you've got one or two to share, Rayne, so why don't you kick the ball off?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this, like why, in that email in particular, why do you see this thing where he feels like he's talking past these people and is behind? And I see two problems, both of which these resources will help with. I think the first problem I see, I've spoken to a lot of Protestant ministers in the last few weeks, visiting churches, where they actually don't see Catholicism as a separate religion.
Yeah.
So they might think that, the praying to Mary or transubstantiation, that some of these things are different or wrong even, but they don't see the gospel as being fundamentally undermined. And so I've been trying to say to these pastors to say, it's not a Christian denomination. It's actually something different. And sometimes they look at me like, whoa, this is really radical. And they have more questions for me, which is great.
Yeah.
So I think if Protestants come from that background, then it doesn't seem crazy to explore Catholicism. And I think the other side of the coin is there's many rectors, probably like this guy or pastors or, whatever you want to call them, where they do understand that the gospel is compromised in Roman Catholicism, but they don't really understand why. I got a message to the Certainty4Eternity Instagram page from someone that follows us and I've had some interaction with, who is meeting up with someone from a Catholic background to read the Bible. And he was really surprised to find out that this guy thinks that you can be saved as a Protestant because he doesn't understand Vatican II and how that, has not changed, but has influenced modern Catholic theology. And so I think that a lot of Catholics have this idea that Protestants just don't understand Catholicism. Yeah. And so if a Protestant is exploring Catholicism and they're told by their priest or Catholic friends, well, the Protestants just don't really understand us and it's the full expression, then you do end up talking past them because they're going back into the Protestant service at this church or others thinking they actually just don't really understand what I'm learning. Yeah. And so it just gets you on the wrong foot.
Yeah, that was my experience as well as a Roman Catholic. Reading the Bible with Protestants, whenever they'd say something about Roman Catholicism, my Protestant friends would often seem like they missed the mark. A lot of what they were saying was actually true and I didn't want to accept what they had to say, but it was fairly easy, given the insulation and kind of promotion that I've been given within the Roman Catholic Church to go, oh, these guys don't really understand Roman Catholicism. If they're criticising it, then by definition they've got Roman Catholicism wrong, because as the Roman Catholic Church teaches, Roman Catholicism, they believe, contains the fullness of truth. So by definition, if you're criticising Roman Catholic theology, then you're wrong, even regardless of the arguments that you might be bringing forward. So you do encounter a bit of that as well. The other thing that I think we've mentioned once or twice in the podcast is that there is a movement in Western cultures, in North America, in Europe, in Australia, and other Western cultures, of particularly 20-year-old-ish young men being very attracted to conservative religions, to conservative Protestantism, and to Roman Catholicism and Orthodoxy as well. There's something about the modern age that seems to be unfulfilling for this group, particularly of young men, and they're finding truth and meaning and purpose in some of the more traditional Christian denominations and other churches like Roman Catholicism and Orthodoxy.
Absolutely. And I get that to some degree. Like, even at my church, we never sing hymns, and it drives me nuts because I love hymns. And we had Pentecost Sunday a couple weeks ago. I was service leading, and I got up and said, "Come Thou Fount" is the best Pentecost Sunday song of all time because of the story behind it. And, it's only 300 and odd years old, but it connects us to the saints of the past. And there's something really wonderful. Or think of All Creatures of Our God and King. Francis of Assisi wrote that song, and it connects us to these saints of old, lowercase saint, Bible saint.
Yeah, or the Te Deum that's been
Is that the
around
Latin?
for 1700 or more years.
Yeah, and there's something wonderful about that, but we should get that same sense when we read the letter to the Ephesians, that it's, or any other part of the New Testament, that this is something that people since antiquity have been reading and have been growing from. Yeah.
Or say the Nicene Creed.
Yeah, it's
wonderful. But only in as far as they're helping us to understand and apply the scriptures.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Always secondary.
Always secondary. But it is a real problem. And this feeling of being misunderstood just creates fences right away. So we need to do our best to understand.
Yeah. And there's plenty of good help around these days, which is wonderful. What are some of the resources that you've personally found helpful as you've struggled as a Protestant to understand your Catholic friends and communicate effectively with them?
So, on Mark's recommendation, I have to read it because I'm going to a conference in Rome, but Gregg Allison's Roman Catholic Theology and Practice and Evangelical Assessment is really good, especially the first couple chapters, because it outlines the systems. It gives you a good way when you think about anything in Catholicism, how do we relate it back to the fundamental axes of the grace-nature interdependence and the Christ-Church continuum. And my other favorite, I realize I didn't grab it because my husband's actually reading it now. Yeah?
Just before you move on, Rayne, just to affirm that too, I think that book is probably the most helpful book written this century for Protestants seeking to understand Roman Catholicism. It's written for a university-educated audience, perhaps people studying Christian religion or theology. It's at that sort of level. But tremendously helpful for all pastors or youth group leaders or Bible study leaders to have a deep and accurate and sympathetic understanding of how Roman Catholicism holds together as a system, a holistic view of Roman Catholicism, Roman Catholic theology and practice and evangelical assessment. Incredibly helpful.
And we'll link it in the description as well, because it's worth reading. And the other thing is it is quite granular, where some of the other resources have been maybe about, like you can see, this is Leonardo De Chirico's Christian's Pocketbook to the Papacy. It's really small. It's only 100 pages. It fits in my tiny little handbag. I've been bringing it everywhere because I need to finish it. But it's been really good. And it's granular, but it's specific. It's about the papacy. It's not about all the other things. But my favorite book I've read in preparation, which my husband's reading now, so I realize I didn't grab it because it's on his nightstand, not on mine, but is also Leonardo De Chirico's, what is it called? It's How to Share. It's basically an evangelism book, how to share your faith with your Catholic friends. Is it Tell Your Friends or?
Yeah.
Can you think of the title?
I think it's called Tell Your Catholic Friend.
I think that's right. It was great because he held no punches, and I felt like it was very confronting, especially if it's the only thing you've read on Catholicism, but it was clear. And it very quickly gave a really good overview of, is Catholicism a Christian denomination? What are the problems compared to evangelical Protestantism? And then really practical tips on communicating with our Catholic friends and integrating all these ideas into different individuals in our lives. So I thought it was abundantly helpful.
Tell Your Catholic Friend. Again, there'll be a link in the description below. Another book of Leonardo's, which I've found very helpful for a lot of people, is Same Words, Different Worlds. This book really helpfully outlines one of the problems in communication with people from a Roman Catholic background, that they seem like they're saying the same thing, but they're actually saying something very different. How do we make sense of that? How do we communicate back with Roman Catholics with words that don't get misunderstood? One of the phrases I love using when I share the gospel with people from a Roman Catholic background is, God saves people who don't deserve it without their help. Rather than saying we're saved by grace alone, which a Roman Catholic might interpret to mean we're saved by receiving the Eucharist every week at Mass, we're saved, God saves people who don't deserve it without their help. By understanding how Catholics use words, we can adapt our words to make our gospel proclamation much clearer and more helpful for them. So that's a terrific book from Leo as well that we'll link in the description below.
He's prolific. I've really appreciated Leo's voice in this. And in addition to these print resources, he has a blog called The Vatican Files, which is good and probably quite granular, because it's specific about things as they're coming out and things that he's thinking of. And then they've got a podcast as well, the Reformanda Initiative, which I've also found very helpful.
Yes, great friend of the podcast, Leonardo De Chirico. And if you go digging, you'll see a couple of interviews of Leo and I. We've discussed a few different issues, like a book that we've collaborated on. And also we had a good chat after Pope Francis, George Bergoglio's funeral last year, helping people to understand the different elements of the funeral, which over 1 billion people watched, by the way. Wow. To just have another way of understanding Roman Catholicism, what's going on. Great friend of the podcast, Leonardo De Chirico.
Wonderful. Do you have anything else that you want to suggest, Mark? You've actually written, he's being modest. Mark has done a very excellent job at developing resources in this area. And so he's going to talk a bit more about that now.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Rayne. Well, one of the resources that a lot of people have found really helpful, I think over 10,000 people have actually purchased this little book. I'd like to think, because the content is fantastic, but I suspect it might also have a little bit to do with the cover, which is quite eye-catching. And it's called The God Who Saves, 5 Studies for People That Think That Faith Matters. This is a book that I put together when I was training to be a minister about 20 years ago. And I felt like the ways that we explain the gospel to Roman Catholics weren't sharp or clear enough for Roman Catholics to understand. So I took some of the key ideas, key themes that we talk with people about when we seek to share the gospel with them, and put them together in a way that's clearer and more helpful for Roman Catholics. It's a very thin little book. There's only 5 studies. They take about 20 or 30 minutes each. And it's very easy to sit down with your Roman Catholic friend and just read through some key passages in the Bible and ask some questions that seek to understand what those passages are saying, for them to have heard the gospel and for you to be able to see whether they've understood and accepted the gospel. So it's quite helpful for you to work out whether you think your Catholic friend or family is actually genuinely saved, because the answers to the questions often reveal that quite clearly. None of the questions say anything about Roman Catholicism. A Catholic won't perceive that this is designed for particularly Roman Catholics. It just deals with 5 key topics from the scriptures and presents a clear explanation of those 5 topics. It starts with the topic of grace, and as we've talked about before, Catholics and Protestants have got different understandings of the word grace. This presents the concept of grace from the Bible's perspective. Second one is sin, and there are differences in Catholic and Protestant understandings of sin. For Catholics, it's more how many sins you do. For Protestants, it's that sin reveals a heart that's far from God. The third one is the atonement and how important that is in understanding how we can be sure of our relationship with God through what Jesus has done on the cross. The fourth study is faith, and again, faith is differently understood between Catholics and Protestants, so it's quite helpful to unpack that. And last of all, the place of works in a Christian life. Often as Protestants, we kind of leave works out a bit, and Catholics can sometimes perceive our understanding, our explanations of the gospel to be saying, well, what you do doesn't matter, which is profoundly wrong. So a little study on the place of works in the Christian life is how it finishes. So that's a really helpful little book for people from a Catholic background. All of the resources that I've put together you can get through Matthias Media, and we'll put some notes in the description as well. So that's the first one, Rayne.
Can I just ask a question about that book as well? When you're going through that book with a Catholic friend and they say something that's like, and you're trying to gauge where they're at, that is part of the tool, right? Can you give any advice on how we should be responding and reacting if maybe they don't respond in a way that is Christian truly? You know what I mean? Like, if they're responding in a way that's really in line with their Catholic theology and teaching, what's some tips for responding well to that?
A really good question to ask is, where do you see that in the passage? Because it puts the authority back in the scriptures. And if what they're saying just isn't there, they kind of need to acknowledge that. And even that in itself can be helpful. Personal testimony is also very helpful. You know, this is what I understand the passage to be saying for these sorts of reasons. So, but I don't know, we all struggle with learning and understanding. We're not going to necessarily fix everyone's misunderstandings every time with every Bible study, but it's part of the learning process. So kind of keep things open, let people explore, don't shut people down, and pray for them.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Mark. Thank you.
Cool. No problem. The second little book we've put out is a book of stories, because everybody loves stories. Jesus told lots of stories in his parables. The Old Testament is full of stories. And as Christians, we all have a story. And it's a miraculous story. It's a story of putting our trust in Jesus and living as one of his followers in this world. So what we did a few years ago is to put together a collection of stories of men and women from different ages, different continents, different backgrounds together to help Christians read some of these people's stories. These are people that grew up in a Roman Catholic context, heard the gospel, and the effect that hearing the gospel has had on their lives. One fellow, a North American man, Roman Catholic, heard a street preacher explain the gospel, and it was the first time he'd ever heard it, and that was the pivotal moment for him. I've never met anyone else in my life that's been converted through a street preacher, but there's one of them in this book, which is amazing. There's a lot of different stories. There's another story of a Holocaust survivor who heard the gospel, prison camp, and came to put her trust in Jesus alone. So wonderful stories from around the world, men and women. A great read for Protestants to understand Roman Catholicism from a very personal perspective, but also for Catholics that might be questioning Roman Catholicism, a great gift to give to those people. Because when I left the Catholic Church, Rayne, I thought I was the only person crazy enough to think that little old me might have this thing called the gospel right and the Catholic Church had it wrong. That seemed to me to be a crazy idea. But to read stories of men and women throughout history, and even in my own life that had come to that understanding as well, and hear what happened as a result of that has been wonderfully helpful for me. So that's part of why we put this book together. And if people want to get to know me a little bit better as well, my story's in there too, Rayne. So
adding to cart right now.
Find out a few more secrets that I may not have revealed so far. But that's a fun one, an easy read, very encouraging for Christians, and can be helpful for Catholics as well. So that's number 2.
And that is so helpful as well, just because people can present so differently in their own journeys as Catholics. Like in the Tell Your Friend book that Leo's written, he opens up by talking about 3 different friends that he has from a Catholic background. One who is actually quite liberal and but still identified as Catholic, and someone that would never miss a mass and actively prayed to Mary for a whole host of things. And then there was a third person who I can't recall. But when we can see these different stories, it helps us to think even about our friends and think, oh, are they more like them or like them? Like, what does Catholicism mean to each person? Yeah. And just knowing what questions to ask.
Yeah, and also what was helpful for different people in different situations and circumstances, and even from different cultural backgrounds. We can learn lots of tips by listening to these wonderful stories of God at work.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool.
So the third one that we've done is a little bit different. This is actually what we wrote to give to your Catholic friend or family member. Particularly someone from a Catholic background that might seem to be drifting away from the Catholic Church. This one is called The Road Once Travelled, and it's written in a way that's attractive to Catholics, with different Catholic kind of images and symbols that they might identify with, that may help them as they read this book to get to know Jesus better. It's a very gentle book. It's picking up on some of the struggles that many Roman Catholics have. We know there's struggles that Roman Catholics have because the topics are chosen from a survey that the Roman Catholic Church did amongst its people about why people were struggling to continue to attend the Catholic Church and why people were getting more disconnected with the Catholic Church. And there were 3 particular issues that lots of Catholics seem to struggle with. One is persistent feelings of guilt. The second is feeling like the leadership has let them down. And then the third is feeling like religion doesn't connect with their day-to-day lives. And what we did in this book is we actually affirmed those Catholics and said, these things are not bad feelings to have. The answer to all of these feelings is Jesus. Yes. Jesus is the answer to your persistent feelings of guilt. Jesus is the leader that you're looking for. Every other human leader will ultimately let you down. Yeah. And Jesus is the answer to make religion relevant to every single moment of your life. There's nothing in your life that isn't relevant to Jesus and your relationship with him. So the book finishes by saying you might be drifting away from the Catholic Church. Don't give up on Jesus. And the way to find Jesus is to find a group of people that you can read the Bible with. And that's as far as it goes. It's very gentle. It's not going to offend your Catholic friends and family. It's written pastorally to help them where they are at. And that's a great first book to give people from a Roman Catholic background to help them move closer to being able to understand the gospel and put their faith in Jesus. So I really encourage people to have a look at that. By all means, if you're Protestant, have a read of it, but it's not written for you. So it might seem a bit strange. It is written for your Catholic friend, though. So get your hands on one of those if you can and give it away. Catholics won't find it in their bookshops, I can guarantee that. The only way they'll get a copy is if you give them one. So, get hold of one of those. So, couple of other resources to mention before we finish up. There's lots of helpful things around, aren't there, for people now that once you start to delve into it. One of the things that we've put together more recently is a series of Bible studies, if you like, or units for small groups to study together on called Talking with Catholics About Jesus. And I'm going to show you a clip of that so you can have a bit of a feel about what that looks like now.
According to the Vatican, in 2021, there were 1.3 billion Catholics worldwide. No matter where you live, you are likely to encounter someone influenced by Roman Catholicism. Talking with Catholics About Jesus is a course to help people understand Roman Catholics better so that they can have great conversations about the gospel with Catholics that aren't saved and even help disciple Catholics that are. I will be presenting this course with Simon, a Christian missionary in Italy, and Chris, a missionary in Chile. This course is designed to be run for Protestant Christians in small groups with some video input, including Bible teaching, some theology and history, and also stories from believers with a Roman Catholic background. There will be a bit of reading and plenty of time for discussion. We're going to help you to develop a holistic understanding of Roman Catholicism. Part 1 with 6 sessions will help people to understand key concepts in Roman Catholicism better. Part 2 with 4 sessions will help with the practical side of evangelism and discipleship of people from a Roman Catholic background. My hope and prayer is that by doing this course, you'll get to know God better, and you'll also get to know Catholics in your lives better and feel inspired and more confident in talking with them about Jesus.
So this course that we've put together is 10 units in 2 parts. I suggest people, when they run it, not do the 10 units necessarily straight through, but maybe if you're in a small group, run the first half of the course, which is 6 units, focusing on understanding Roman Catholicism, and then give it a break for a term or 2, and then do the second half, which is 4 units, about lots of helpful tips and practical applications of our understanding of Roman Catholicism in our evangelism and discipleship of our Catholic friends and family. So you could start with the theory and then finish with the practical half of the course, or you could do it the other way around. Some groups would much rather get some practical tips first and then seek to understand why those practical tips are so helpful. So Talking with Catholics About Jesus, only available online, again through Matthias Media. There are 10 videos and a workbook that you can download to do in your small groups. You can do it as a church. You can do it as part of your youth leadership training. There's lots of ways that you can use this material helpfully to understand Roman Catholicism and have great chats with Catholics about Jesus. We actually use a couple of missionaries. One missionary who works in Rome amongst Roman Catholics there, another missionary who works in Chile amongst Roman Catholics in Chile. So we've got quite an international perspective on Roman Catholicism, and really helpful inputs by Simon and Chris on that as well, and even filmed on location in some of their home cities and in Rome as well. So lots of good stuff to look at and talk about in that course. So Talking with Catholics About Jesus. One last book, Rayne, just to mention, and it's a collaboration between myself and Leonardo De Chirico, and also Lauren Montenegro, who you saw in last episode's podcast, and also Rachel Ciano, who was in one of our podcasts last year, and a few other Christian authors from around the world, looking at the Nicene Creed and what Catholics mean when they say the Nicene Creed, and what Protestants mean when they say the Nicene Creed. It's important to understand some of these really key historical texts, historical moments, historical creeds in our history as Christians. And we mentioned a little bit earlier on that a lot of young people are being very attracted to some of these historically rooted religions like Protestantism, Roman Catholicism, even Orthodoxy. We want to be able to affirm our Christian roots, particularly things like the Nicene Creed, have a deep understanding of what Christians were fighting for then and there on the basis of the Scriptures. But we also want to be able to understand Roman Catholics who say very similar words but mean quite different things by the words of the same creed. So that book on the Nicene Creed is really helpful for Protestants to understand their historical rootedness and the men and women that we depend on that have defended the faith through the Scriptures, but also to understand Roman Catholics who read these words differently. So the Nicene Creed, the nature of Christian unity and the meaning of gospel words is another great resource for people that are trying to explore these ideas a bit more. Any other thoughts, Rayne?
Mark, thank you so much. I just really appreciate the time that you've taken in writing these resources and sharing them out, and just thinking so thoughtfully about how you can reach the people that you really love, you know, when you were growing up as a Roman Catholic. I have a couple questions. The first one is, for the road once traveled, do you think that's only worthwhile giving to a Catholic friend if they're in the place that they're questioning Catholicism? Or if you say my stepdad's Catholic, do I put it in his stocking at Christmas, even though he's not really at a place where he's actively questioning it?
Yeah. So I would give it to Catholics that seem to be drifting away from Catholicism. So in the city that I live, 95% of Catholics under 40 don't go to Mass regularly. So in other words, most Catholics that you meet that have a Catholic identity but are in varying degrees of being disconnected from Roman Catholicism would really benefit from reading this book, because it says you might be drifting away from Roman Catholicism or, you know, struggling as a Catholic. Don't give up on Jesus. I've even had Catholic friends
that's really helpful
that have given the book to their friends that are drifting away from Catholicism, which is wonderful.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really encouraged by all of that, because I think with the Nicene Creed book, when I have conversations with Protestants who I spoke about at the beginning, where maybe they're just not quite convinced that Catholicism isn't a Christian denomination, that clarity of when they think of the things that we're united in, and to just say, you know, well, we all say the same creed, but do we mean the same thing by what we say, is really helpful probably for people in ministry. And I would really readily hand that out to my friends in ministry. But the one I'm really keen is, I really want to get the God who saves.
Yeah.
And it seems risky, but I would love to start a Bible study with some of my Catholic colleagues and see if they would read it with me. I'd be outnumbered by a lot, but it could be really interesting to see what they think on those topics.
Yeah, I think that'd be really helpful.
Yes.
And don't even mention that it's about Catholicism. It's about these, you know, really important elements of Christianity, because it doesn't say the word Catholic once in the book, but it'll ask questions like, if you're trusting in the fact that you've been baptized to know that you're going to heaven, are you trusting in Jesus alone? Yeah.
I think it would be interesting. I'd be really keen to read it with the Catholics in my sphere and to see what they think, and to be able to open up doors of more conversations that way. So I think I'm going to buy that one, and my challenge to myself is going to be to read it with a Catholic friend this year, which will be wonderful, or many.
Last time I checked, I think it was $5. So
that's super cheap.
It might be
for
10
sure.
now.
I'll buy 10.
Shouldn't say, but
well, I'll buy many copies, and because I think that's a really good goal. And even I think of my husband, that, you know, he works at a secular, like a public school, but just the fact that I know he's got Roman Catholics in his staff room who might be open to sitting down at lunchtime and maybe reading one with him. I think that would be really interesting. So I'll keep that in mind, and I'll mention it to him as well, because it's probably a great thing to be able to give to our Bible study group is a resource as well to encourage them to be doing the same thing. Yeah. And then the last resource that we really want to encourage you guys on is this podcast.
Yes.
We've recorded about 20 episodes now for you guys. And it's been so, for me speaking, because Mark's the expert, I'm just the question asker, but it's been really transformative for me to be doing this, to be engaging in these conversations and to be thinking about these specific questions. And I hope it's been the same for some of our listeners. And the best thing that you can, well, not the best thing, sharing the gospel that Jesus died for people who don't deserve it and saves them without their help. That's the goal. But to share this with other Christians in your sphere, to rewatch the episodes if you feel like you need more clarification on a topic, to write in with us and engage so that we can make content that serves you and equips you where you need it most. Like, that is so helpful. And that actually does the most to support us in this project as well. So I want to encourage you guys to share the Certainty for Eternity podcast with your Christian friends.
Yeah. Post it in your socials. Say something that you found helpful. And let your friends know about it. We're getting lots and lots of people watching our podcasts now and subscribing. But we hope that it can be useful for even more. So you can help us with that. That'd be wonderful.
And tell your pastors about it too. If you feel like you could ask them what they think, if you notice people from a Roman Catholic background coming into your churches, and you could also pass it on to them, which could equip a whole lot of people in the end, right?
Particularly your youth leaders.
Yes.
And the youth leaders are really, really helpful. We've actually surveyed a bunch of youth leaders about this podcast to see what's helpful for them. So letting them know about it in your church is a great thing you can do. Yeah,
absolutely. What's coming is we are going to take a few weeks off. We're going to take about a month off and refresh.
We're going to Rome.
We're going to Rome. I'm really excited. I've never been to Rome.
If you're subscribed, you never know.
So make sure you're following along for that. We're going to Rome. Mark's got some other overseas stuff that he's got to do. And then we're going to come back. And when we come back, we're going to be doing interviews with people who grew up Roman Catholic and have found Jesus in the true gospel. And we're going to be doing testimony interviews in the second half of this year.
We're calling it Stepping Out in Faith, in line with the book of testimonies that we've put together. Now, video testimonies of wonderful stories of God at work in people's lives from hopefully all around the world. So watch out for that. Yeah,
we're very excited. I think that testimony is one of those things that share with our Catholic friends our experience and what it means for us to share, invite, show Jesus. That's not right. What is it, Mark?
Yeah. Invite, share, show Jesus. What a great way to finish this season, Rayne. I will see you in Rome, Rayne.
And I will see you in Rome, Mark.
All right. Bye for now.